So listen to this clip.
Bono, who's the best player in the world ever?
For me, the best player in the world ever, Diego Maradona.
Me.
Did you hear how everyone laughed? Yeah, now it seems dumb, but I'm willing to bet that if you were there that day, you would have laughed too. For the longest time, to even insinuate that Ronaldo could go on to become a contender for the greatest of all time seemed like complete sacrilege. The kind of transformation he went through was something never before seen in the sport. It was abrupt, brutal, and at times cruel. Any other teenage sensation would have crumbled at the first obstacle, but thankfully, it all happened to precisely the one kid who could survive it. I mean, let's be real, for a while there, it did look straight out of a fairy tale. Ronaldo showed up for a friendly against a Man United squad that had been unbeaten all pre-season and somehow tormented their defense to the point that before the final whistle was even blown, he had Roy Keane telling Sir Alex to sign him before he even leaves the stadium. In the blink of an eye, he had become the most expensive teenager in the history of the Premier League. He had been handed the number 7 shirt of George Best, Cantonite David Beckham, and then, the cherry on the cake, just 4 days after signing his contract, he was thrown to the wolves and still played so magnificently that George Best himself said that it was undoubtedly the most exciting debut he'd ever seen, that many have been called the new George Best, but this is the first time it has been a compliment to me. Then, things got real. Sure, 5 matches later, Ronaldo had Ashley Cole doing the splits. Later, he even dared asking Phil Neville to let him take a free kick and proceeded to score his first ever goal in fantastic fashion. But 4 months later, all he had to his name were 2 goal contributions, and the defenders who once seemed completely hypnotized by his flicks and tricks now had them figured out, getting rougher and rougher, bullying him out of the ball anytime he tried something fancy. So much so that he began diving and flopping around after every contact, quickly becoming one of the most criticized players in the league, as every pundit began calling him a show pony, a selfish player with no end product. His aura had vanished. From there on out, like a mere mortal, Ronaldo kept trying to convince Sir Alex he was worthy of a place in the starting 11. After New Year's, the first few assists started coming in. By the last month of the season, still unable to speak English, he managed to collect his first man of the match. But above all, with the Premier League title long gone to Arsenal's Invincibles and having already scored or assisted in almost every single round of the FA Cup, Ronaldo showed up in the final, scoring a bullet header and putting in an incredible display that had Sir Alex himself protesting the FA's decision to hand the Man of the Match award to Van Nistelrooy, as the kid had just saved them from going completely trophyless. Carrying on with that momentum, once at the Euros, Ronaldo would keep going, coming in at halftime with Portugal trailing behind in their opening match, quickly scoring to become the second youngest goal scorer in the history of the tournament, then running it back with an assist in the very next game to force his way into the starting 11, and eventually scoring one and assisting another to beat the Netherlands 2-1, taking Portugal to their first ever final, only to then shockingly lose to Greece. Regardless, even if his performance had been enough to convince Europe there really was a world-class player in there, enough to force his way into the team of the tournament and 12th place in the Ballon d'Or, once the club season restarted, so did the criticism. 27 matches into the year, Ronaldo had a single goal to his name, and even Gary Neville, who at times had defended him, was now putting up the question of whether it was worth it to keep betting on a player who couldn't score, one who could just turn off at times and not even help the team defend. But thankfully, again, the new year would show us the new Ronaldo. By February, as United stepped into one of the toughest matches of the season, with Roy Keane and Vieira squaring up in the tunnel, Arsenal going in front, and Henry himself trying to intimidate Ronaldo as the home fans booed the 19-year-old, no one thought he'd stand a chance. But then, their fullback slammed them into the advertising boards as objects rained down from the stands, and he snapped. 2 minutes later, he had already smacked one in to tie the match, getting up and running towards the stands, shushing the crowd. And 5 minutes after that, he banged in another, running it all back. Suddenly, it was Sir Alex who was subbing him off before things got too heated. And though that day everyone would question how anyone could have such nerve at such a young age, then it became clear Ronaldo had grown tougher, sharper, and more resilient as his numbers exploded, leading him on a streak of 13 goal contributions over 18 matches. But if that was the first season where he approached world-class status, it was also the first where he went trophyless, as despite easily being the best player on the pitch, despite being involved in 7 goals in the 5 matches that led him there, United would lose out on the FA Cup final, jump-starting the toughest year of Ronaldo's life, as every expectation laid on his name quickly turned to worry once again. Little more than a month after that last match, Ronaldo's father was hospitalized with severe liver and kidney damage, allegedly having struggled with PTSD since his service at the Portuguese colonial wars and having succumbed to alcoholism as a way to numb the pain. Ronaldo tried everything, he even flew him over to London to get him the best medical care money could buy, but it didn't work. By September, his father had passed away, and that completely changed him. Having spent most of the summer locked in the gym away from the cameras, once he stepped back into training, as physio Mike Fallon would say, that year he came back a totally different animal. He came back a man. His body shape was different, his facial features had changed. We just said, wow, he's ready. But really, whereas his body looked more prepared than ever this time, it was his mind that was completely gone. After 2 weeks of mourning, he made it back to camp and instantly it was clear he had this rage in him that wasn't there before. He went into every challenge desperate to prove he was the best, but every time he ended up overdoing it, losing possession and costing United game after game. In fact, they'd win only 3 out of the first 10 matches following his comeback, with Ronaldo himself struggling to get a single goal. He was obviously emotionally unstable and quickly things started getting out of hand. That very same month, he'd have Giggs visibly gesturing towards them, telling Sir Alex to bring him off the pitch. Weeks later, he was being brought in by the police over some seriously worrying accusations. By December, he'd be getting berated by Ferguson, who quite literally yelled in his face, "Who the hell do you think you are?" After Ronaldo repeatedly hogged the ball in an away match against Benfica, trying to impress the Portuguese crowd only to fail massively, get subbed off, and end up suspended for giving the crowd the middle finger. By the turn of the year, he'd be getting sent off in the middle of the Manchester derby after completely losing his goal, and 3 days later, it all finally blew up, with Van Nistelrooy having enough, stopping in the middle of a practice match to yell at Ronaldo to just cross the ball already, getting into a shouting match and telling him to go crying to his daddy. As you may imagine, the moment Ronaldo heard those words, he charged at him ready to go at it, and all hell broke loose. Van Nistelrooy would eventually apologize, claiming that he was referring to second coach Carlos Queiroz and not actually his dad, but with the media catching wind of the situation, the narrative had been set. Ronaldo had been averaging an horrendous 246 minutes per goal contribution for 5 months now. To everyone's eyes, he had lost it. Even Gary Neville admitted it was to the point I questioned if he had ever had it in him to become a top player. And yet, this still wasn't his lowest point. A bit of a hot streak in February was enough to convince some that the player they had once known was back. He scored his first ever knuckleball against Fulham, then the club's goal of the season a week later, and even helped United secure their only trophy with a goal in the final of the League Cup. But then, once the season ended, Sir Alex was forced to make a choice, so he went ahead and sold Van Nistelrooy to Real Madrid, banking on Ronaldo and Rooney to carry the team to glory, which he'd regret almost instantly. You know the story. At the World Cup, 62 minutes into Portugal versus England, Rooney stomps on Carvalho's private parts. Ronaldo rushes towards the referee, demanding him to be sent off. The two end up getting into it, pushing each other around, and as Rooney is given his marching orders, Ronaldo is spotted winking at the bench. And again, the media comes in blasting, tarnishing Ronaldo's name no matter how many times he insisted he was only winking, as a way to tell the bench he had heard their orders to move further up the pitch. It was pointless. Nothing sold more newspapers than another headline declaring him as public enemy number 1. By the end of the World Cup, even FIFA themselves had been led to believe that story was true, going as far as snubbing him out of the Young Player of the Tournament award, giving it to Podolski instead, while claiming Ronaldo lacked the fair play necessary to be worthy of such a prize. Though, as you may imagine, it would be much harder than that to keep his hands away from some silver. Upon returning to Manchester, Ronaldo did consider quitting. In fact, he made it public that he thought he should get out, that he wanted to play in Spain, but Sir Alex would simply not let him. He told him that what was happening to him had already happened to his predecessor, that they too had tried to kill off David Beckham after his red card at the 1998 World Cup, and that if Beckham had survived that, so could Cristiano, because in his own words, "You're one of the bravest I've ever known. Walking away just isn't like you." In fact, so much was his confidence that he'd succeed. He'd bet him £400 that he could hit 15 league goals that year, even though he had never hit double digits, even though the record for a midfielder had just been established by Frank Lampard at 16. So, it was time to get started. No matter if the boos kept echoing throughout the stadium, right on the first match Ronaldo and Rooney would combine to shut down the rumours and demolish Fulham 5-1. Then, nearly a year after the Benfica incident, Ronaldo would go back to Lisbon and drop a man-of-the-match performance, assisting their only goal and completing 14 dribbles, the second highest tally in the history of the Champions League. Then, in October, he joined the national team to score one of the greatest goals of his career, only to get wrongfully denied yet again, and by November, that kind of thing would be done. One rocket of a free kick against Portsmouth and a half volley against Everton to be named the league's best player of the month, and when they thought it just couldn't get better, 7 goals and 2 assists over 6 matches in December, becoming only the third ever to win back-to-back Player of the Month awards. By the first match of February, he was already on 23 goal contributions for the season, and to the great distaste of Sir Alex Ferguson, on 15 league goals. It was only a matter of time until he broke Lampard's record, but before that, being yet to score a goal in the Champions League after 5 years in the competition, Ronaldo had to destroy the rumours that he was a big game bottler, opening his tally with 2 goals against Roma, then another against the AC Milan of Maldini and Nesta. And though, unfortunately, a Kaká masterclass would have him get knocked out of the competition regardless, back home, with United risking their place at the top of the league, falling behind 2-0 against Everton, with about 30 minutes left in the game and 3 matches left in the season, Sir Alex would call Ronaldo up from the bench like he was releasing the Kraken, and by the end, he had flipped the result into a 4-2, scoring the very next game as well, to make United Premier League champions. After starting the year as the country's problem child, Ronaldo had managed to bring his tally up to 37 goal contributions, taking every award imaginable, even becoming the youngest since the 70s to be named Player of the Year. But even if he had already won over everyone, that was nothing compared to what was about to come. Believe it or not, United started the next season with 3 games without a win, and Ronaldo, well, not only did he not score, but in the third of those matches he was sent off and suspended for another 3. However, this wasn't a disaster. Instead, it was one of the most important moments of his career. Noticing that Ronaldo was working extra hours, already trying to make up for the time he'd lost, legendary second coach René Meulenstein stayed behind after a training session and asked him what was his biggest goal. Obviously, Ronaldo replied that he wanted to be the best player in the world, so then he told him, "I can help you with that. Right now the weakest side of your game is your attitude, because it affects your decision making. I watched every single one of your goals from last year, and you only scored 23 because you want to score the perfect goal every time. As good as you have become, you play to put yourself in the limelight, to say, look at me, top corner again. So I gotta ask you, how many goals do you think you could actually score if you put your mind to it?" Ronaldo replied, "Between 30 to 35. So René said, "I'm sure you could score 40, so as long as you're suspended, I'm gonna teach you how to become deadly." And for the next 30 days, he hammered Ronaldo with footage from Shearer, Lineker, Solskjaer, Van Nistelrooy, and in his own words, taught him one thing: it doesn't matter how you score, as long as the ball goes in the net. And so, over the 18 matches from his comeback up to New Year's Eve, Ronaldo scored 18 goals. 6 of them, as per usual, were absolute stunners, but 3 had been proper striker finishes coming out of nowhere to tap it in. Another 3 were penalties, and the most important of all, in the space of 3 months, Ronaldo had scored 6 headers, as many as he had over the previous 5 years of his career. To say that it was frightening to watch was the bare minimum. Only 12 days into the new year, Ronaldo had already scored his first ever hat-trick. To start, a free kick under the wall; for the second, a perfect run in the clinic finest finish. For the third, he grabbed onto a loose ball, got away from his marker and rifled it in. And somehow, just 3 matches after that, he had already added 5 more goals to his tally, including that free kick against Portsmouth. So suddenly, as the commentator said that everything he touched turned to gold, Ronaldo had already tied his previous season's goal-scoring tally. So he went up to Mühlenstein and he told him, "You can do one of 2 things now. You can take your foot off the pedal or push even further." So this time, it wasn't Fanny Roy on the TV, it was Muhammad Ali. It was about mentality, and goddamn, did that work. Starting in March, Ronaldo went on a run of 7 consecutive matches scoring, always coming in whenever they needed him the most. It seemed every goal was either an equalizer or a winner, but among those performances, one stood far above the rest. Against Aston Villa, he put up simply one of the greatest shows in Premier League history. United won 4-0, and Ronaldo scored the opener with a ridiculous back heel, then put in a perfect first-time cross for the second, another outlandish backheel touch to set up the third, and then another assist just as clean for the fourth. As the league season ended, it wasn't that he had broken the goal-scoring record or become the first winger to win the European Golden Boot. It was about timing. Ronaldo's 37 goals and assists had won his team 24 points in a season where they were declared champions over a 2-point margin. It's hard to even put it into words. Almost every single goal was clutch. And in the Champions League, it wasn't much different. Ronaldo scored against almost every single opponent they faced. Even in the final against Chelsea, he was the one to score their only goal. Again, a header. And though in the end, after he missed his penalty, it did take a tad of luck to bring it all together and make United European champions, there were no doubts who had made it all possible. As UEFA ended out their awards, Chelsea took Best Goalkeeper, Best Defender, Best Midfielder, but the Best Player award went undoubtedly to Ronaldo, who at 23 years of age had taken virtually every award available to him, as many started referring to his season as the most dominant in history, one that completely redefined what it even meant to be a winger. And 6 months later, following a massive transfer saga, his second European Championship, a surgery to his ankle and a victorious run at the Club World Cup, Ronaldo finally reached his goal, being voted by 77 out of 96 journalists as the best player in the world. Matter of fact, it was one of the few editions of the Ballon d'Or where one name was present in every single ballot. Ronaldo was undeniable, and by the end of that final season, he had made United Premier League champions for the 3rd time in a row. He had led them on the longest unbeaten Champions League run of all time, all the way to a second final, scoring 2 of the greatest goals in history on his way there. And even though they did lose, only a few weeks later, he had become the most expensive player of all time as he moved on to the next chapter of his career, one that somehow made all of what I just said look completely average.